2:14 a.m., the Strait of Hormuz. The air is pulled tight like a piano wire. On the United States Navy radar screens, everything looks quiet. Then, hell rips its doors open. From the jagged cliffs, Iran launches a desperate strike aimed at the jugular of the global economy. A blinding swarm of 76 Shahed 136 suicide drones pours over the water. Hiding behind that noise are 3 Noor anti-ship missiles, skimming the dark waves just 10 feet above the surface, screaming toward a Suezmax oil tanker and its American escort fleet. If this wave of flying scrap metal breaches the perimeter, then $250 million of crude oil will become a raging inferno, throwing thousands of American sailors into a meat grinder. Most people would look at that screen and see panic. But here is the catch that the Iranian planners completely missed. Stay focused, because the physics of destruction in the next few minutes will turn their masterstroke into absolute humiliation. Deep inside a coastal command bunker, Iranian officers are already throwing a premature victory party. They stare at glowing blips, multiplying like locusts on their monitors, absolutely convinced they have checkmated the greatest naval power on Earth. To them, this is a flawless execution of asymmetric warfare, forcing the American fleet into a brutal mathematical corner. Their arrogant strategy relies on flooding the night sky with cheap fiberglass drones to exhaust the multi-million-dollar interceptors of the U.S. Navy. They believe the sheer volume of these flying lawnmowers will create an impenetrable fog of electronic chaos, blinding American radar operators just long enough for the Noor missiles to slip through and crack the oil tanker in half. The room echoes with laughter and high fives as they celebrate their supposed genius. But folks, here is the lethal error. Casual viewers might look at this overwhelming swarm and see a guaranteed win. But those of you with a sharp strategic mind already know the brutal truth. While the Iranian commanders celebrate, believing they have permanently blinded the American fleet, they are completely oblivious to the digital noose already tightening around their crude swarm. Cruising invisibly at 30,000 feet, an E-2D advanced Hawkeye is carving slow circles in the dark, using its massive radar dome to slice through the enemy's pathetic electronic jamming like a scalpel through butter. This all-seeing brain has not only detected the incoming garbage, it has already mathematically categorized, tracked, and painted a bullseye on every single fiberglass drone before they even cross the coastline. The United States Navy does not fight as isolated ships. They fight as an integrated kill web, instantly feeding perfect targeting data down via Link 16 straight into the Aegis combat system of the USS Carney. If you ask why the American captain hasn't ordered an immediate barrage of interceptors yet, I will tell you an unbelievable military secret about digital execution. The tactical picture inside the Combat Information Center of the USS Carney is flashing with a terrifying dilemma, one that was engineered specifically to break the bank of the United States Navy. The Iranian strategy is not about overwhelming firepower. It is a calculated, cynical game of economic attrition. Down in the bunker, the enemy is banking on the sheer absurdity of the cost-exchange ratio. Each of those 76 Shahed 136 suicide drones buzzing through the night sky is essentially a flying moped carrying a warhead built in a dirty garage for roughly $20,000 apiece. Against them stands the absolute pinnacle of American air defense, the mighty RIM 174 Standard Missile 6. The SM-6 is a masterpiece of supersonic interception, capable of swatting ballistic missiles out of the stratosphere, but it carries a staggering price tag of almost $5 million per shot. If you were the commander of this Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, staring at that terrifying wall of incoming contacts, what would your next move be? Would you empty your vertical launch cells, burning through $380 million of American taxpayer money just to swat down $1.5 million worth of Iranian fiberglass? That is exactly the financial trap the enemy has laid, hoping the American captain will panic, hit the big red button, and drain the ship's entire magazine of high-end interceptors on cheap decoys. If the Carney takes the bait and exhausts its magazine on the swarm, the ship will be left completely defenseless when the real killers, the 3 sea-skimming Noor anti-ship missiles, finally break the horizon at Mach 1. The Iranian commanders are practically salivating at this mathematical checkmate. thinking they have forced the U.S. Navy into a lose-lose situation where surviving the night means bankrupting the fleet and leaving the Suezmax oil tanker vulnerable to the follow-up strike. The clock is ticking down relentlessly. Time to impact. 120 seconds. The roaring sound of those cheap two-stroke engines is echoing across the black water, closing the distance while the American crew sits in deafening silence. Average viewers will think this is the moment the mighty U.S. Navy has to bite the bullet and swallow a humiliating financial loss just to stay afloat. But wait, there is one more layer to this triple threat failure that the enemy never saw coming. Back in the suffocating heat of the underground command center, the Iranian officers are practically drowning in their own arrogance. They are intoxicated by cheap propaganda, genuinely believing their garage-built swarm has paralyzed the greatest naval force in human history. The room is filled with the sickening sound of premature celebration, with commanders slapping each other on the back and pointing at radar screens, showing their suicide drones closing the distance. They are already drafting the press releases, ready to brag to the world about how their $20,000 toys humiliated a $2 billion American destroyer. To them, the silence from the USS Carney is not tactical patience. They think it is absolute panic. They imagine American sailors running around in chaos, terrified of the impending fiberglass storm. The general in charge is smirking, watching the blips merge closer to the fleet, completely oblivious to the fact that his tactical picture is an absolute illusion. He thinks he is the master of asymmetric warfare, a genius who just solved the multi-million-dollar puzzle of American air defense with a fleet of flying lawnmowers. But the reality is far more brutal. They are celebrating a victory that will never arrive, cheering for a swarm that is already dead in the eyes of the Aegis combat system. The radar feeds they are watching are about to become a permanent monument to their catastrophic failure. The officers are laughing, absolutely certain that their sea-skimming Noor missiles are safe behind the drone screen, ready to deliver the final killing blow to the Suezmax tanker. They are so blinded by their ego that they cannot see the digital executioner raising its blade in the dark. Most people would look at this arrogant display and feel a sense of dread for the sailors caught in the crosshairs. But those of you with a sharp tactical mind, stay with me, because how this ends is a masterclass in making the grizzly blink first. Time remaining to impact, 90 seconds. Down in the bunker, the Iranian generals are eagerly waiting for the fireworks show, fully expecting the American destroyer to panic and empty its vertical launch cells. But here is the genius detail that makes this mission an absolute masterclass in modern warfare. The USS Carney does not fire a single standard missile. Instead of throwing away hundreds of millions of dollars on flying fiberglass, the heavy steel doors on the flight deck slide open, and an MH-60R Seahawk helicopter roars into the pitch-black sky, armed to the teeth with something the enemy never factored into their arrogant math. Slung under its stub wings are pods of APKWS, the Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System. This is where the physics of destruction completely changes the map. For a mere $30,000 a pop, the United States military took unguided, cheap hydro rockets and slapped incredibly precise laser guidance sections right in the middle of them, turning dumb explosives into surgical sniper rounds that can thread a needle at 3 miles. The American commander just flipped the financial script entirely, bringing a cost-effective scalpel to a massive drone fight. While the Seahawk hunts the low-hanging garbage, the real lethal error of the Iranian strategy is exposed at 30,000 feet. Most people just see the noisy drone swarm, but the tactical experts watching this know that the true threat is the 3 sea-skimming Noor missiles hiding in the radar clutter, desperately trying to sneak through the chaos to hit the oil tanker. If you ask how the Navy finds them without lighting up their own radars and giving away their position, I will tell you an unbelievable military secret. Gliding silently above the electronic nightmare are stealthy F-35 Sea Lightning II fighters, refusing to turn on their active radars. Instead, they activate their second ace in the hole, the AN/AAQ-37 Distributed Aperture System. This passive sensor network wraps the aircraft in a flawless spherical infrared vision, allowing the American pilots to look straight through the titanium floor of their cockpits and lock onto the heat signatures of the Noor missiles cutting through the cold ocean air. The Iranian operators think they are invisible, hiding their anti-ship missiles behind a wall of cheap disposable drones, laughing and high-fiving in the dark. But wait, if you think this is just a defensive maneuver, you are about to witness the most brutal realization in naval history. The slaughter begins. The MH-60R Seahawk hovers in the dark, acting as an airborne sniper tower. The pilot squeezes the trigger, and a ripple of $30,000 APKWS rockets drops from the pods. The solid rocket motors ignite, painting the night sky with brilliant streaks of violent fire. Down in the bunker, the Iranian generals are still laughing, high-fiving over their brilliant tactical illusion. Don't blink, unless you want to miss the exact moment physics changes history. The laser seekers on the American rockets lock onto the cheap heat signatures of the Shahed 136 engines. The rockets smash into the fragile fiberglass bodies, detonating instantly and turning a carefully planned drone swarm into a cloud of burning confetti, dropping into the dark ocean like dead leaves from a rotting tree. It is an absolute massacre of economics, completely destroying the enemy's return on investment. In less than 60 seconds, the invincible drone wave vanishes from the radar screens. Back in the command center, the laughter dies in their throats. The officers stare at their blank monitors, humiliated by this staggering embarrassment. But folks, here is the lethal error. If you think that was the worst part of their night, look up at the stratosphere. At 30,000 feet, the F-35C stealth fighters unleash their payload. The pilots don't even need to dive. They just drop the aim, 9x sidewinders, letting gravity and advanced thermal seekers do the brutal math. The American missiles scream through the freezing air, locking onto the exhaust plumes of the 3 Noor anti-ship missiles, desperately hugging the waves. The Iranian operators watch in sheer terror as their multi-million-dollar dream of sinking an American oil tanker evaporates. The sidewinders connect, the high-explosive warheads detonate, and the Monroe effect creates a jet of molten copper that punches through the Iranian steel, sending a massive fireball rolling over the black water, leaving nothing but floating scrap. 2:26 a.m. Just 12 minutes after the first blip appeared, the sky above the Strait of Hormuz is completely empty. The Iranian masterstroke has been reduced to burning oil slicks and floating fiberglass on the black water. Aboard the USS Carney, the Combat Information Center remains ice cold, the crew sipping coffee while confirming a sterile airspace. The massive Suezmax oil tanker continues its journey at a steady 15 knots, safely delivering its $250 million cargo without a single scratch. But here is the most humiliating detail for the Iranian generals sweating in their bunker. The American destroyer didn't even break a sweat. The Carney's vertical launch system hatches remain firmly shut, keeping hundreds of millions of dollars of SM-6 interceptors perfectly intact. If you were the Iranian commander looking at this absolute operational failure, would you just panic? Stay with me, because surviving the night was only step one, and the United States Navy is about to flip the board. While the Iranian generals stare at blank monitors, they miss the devastating consequence of their ambush. The United States military didn't just shoot down drones. They used EA-18G Growlers to trace every telemetry signal back to its origin. American electronic warfare officers just downloaded the enemy's communication protocols and triangulated the exact coordinates of the coastal bunkers. In the dark depths of the Arabian Sea, the USS Florida, an Ohio-class nuclear submarine, has quietly flooded its tubes. A swarm of $2 million UGM-109 Tomahawk cruise missiles is now programmed to fly straight down the ventilation shafts of those exact bunkers. The hunters have instantly become the hunted, completely paralyzed by the overwhelming distributed lethality of the U.S. Navy. The United States doesn't just win the battle, they dismantled the enemy's capacity to fight tomorrow. Only a tactical mastermind can answer this. If you were the Iranian commander, would you try to save your pride or your troops? Let me know your Grandmaster move in the comments.